stop. If you are over 60 and you reach for the same pair of pants because they feel safe, there is a very good chance one specific detail on that exact pair is quietly making your belly look bigger every single time you sit down, stand up, or catch your reflection walking past a mirror. Not because of your body, because of the pants. And by the end of this video, you are going to know exactly which detail it is and exactly what to look for instead, starting with pants you probably already own. Think about your own closet for a second. Somewhere in there is almost certainly a pair of pants you avoid entirely, the ones that dig in by the second hour, roll over at the waist by lunchtime, or leave a red line across your stomach by the end of the day. You probably assumed that discomfort was simply the price of finding pants that fit anywhere else on your body. It never occurred to you that the discomfort itself was the actual clue, pointing directly at one fixable detail nobody ever taught you to look for. Pants are supposed to be the reliable piece, the one you throw on without a second thought because you already know they fit. But for so many apple-shaped women over 60, that trusted pair quietly stopped working years ago, and nobody ever pointed out why. You blamed the fabric, you blamed a bad hair day, you blamed the lighting in the store mirror. Anything except the one small design choice sitting at your waistline that was never built with your shape in mind. Here is what almost nobody tells you when you are standing in a dressing room, tugging at a waistband that keeps rolling or digging in no matter how many times you adjust it. It is not your body fighting the pants. It is the pants fighting your body, in a very specific and very fixable way. There is one detail, sitting right at your midsection, that decides almost everything about whether a pair of pants makes you look sharp and put together or heavier and older than you actually are. I am going to walk you through 5 pants mistakes today, counting down from 5 to 1, the exact mistakes I see apple-shaped women over 60 make again and again, often with the pants they reach for the most. And I want you to hear this clearly because it is the whole point of this video. Your body has never been the problem. These are simple, learnable proportions, the same visual math a stylist relies on every single day, and once you understand it, you will look at every single pair of pants in your closet completely differently. I promise you this. The last item on this list, the number 1 detail, is the exact detail this video is named for, the one single change that makes the biggest difference of anything we are going to cover today. Almost nobody over 60 has ever had this explained to them properly, and once you understand it, you will be able to spot it on a hanger in about 2 seconds, long before you ever try a single pair on. It works on pants you already own just as well as it works on anything new you buy from today forward. So stay with me all the way to the end, because I really do not want you to miss it. Let's start at the beginning. Number 5. Wearing a low-rise pair of pants that sits below the widest part of your belly instead of above it. Low-rise pants have been marketed for years as the comfortable, easy, non-restrictive option, the alternative to what people unfairly call the granny waistband. I understand the appeal completely. Nobody wants to feel boxed in or old-fashioned. But here is the detail nobody explains when they hand you that advice. On an apple shape, your belly typically has one fullest point, and if the waistband of your pants sits below that point instead of above it or right at it, your stomach has nowhere to go but forward and slightly over the top edge of the fabric. That small overhang creates a visible line and a soft bulge exactly where the waistband cuts across you, an effect sometimes called the muffin top, and it happens with pants that technically fit you correctly everywhere else. The fix is not necessarily jumping all the way up to a very high, restrictive waistband if that does not feel like you. It is simply choosing a rise that sits at or above your belly's fullest point, rather than below it. Here is a simple way to check this before you ever buy anything. Stand naturally in front of a mirror and place your open hand flat against your stomach, right at the point where your belly projects the furthest forward. That is your fullest point. Any waistband sitting below that line is going to create the overhang we just talked about, no matter how comfortable the fabric feels. Any waistband sitting at or above that line gives your stomach somewhere to settle inside the pants instead of over them. It is a 30-second test, and it will change how you shop for pants for the rest of your life. There is also a common myth worth addressing directly here because it comes up in nearly every conversation I have about waistlines. Raising the rise does not mean sacrificing comfort or looking stiff and old-fashioned. A well-cut mid to high-rise pair, especially one with even a small amount of stretch woven in, can feel just as relaxed against your body as a low-rise pair, while doing considerably more visual work for you. The discomfort so many women associate with higher rise pants usually comes from a poorly shaped waistband rather than the height of the rise itself, which is a detail we are going to come back to later in this video, because it matters more than almost anything else on this entire list. It also helps to know that rise height is not a fixed universal number that applies the same way to every single body. Your fullest point might sit a little higher or a little lower than another woman's, even at a similar size, simply because of how your particular frame is built. That is exactly why the hand test matters so much more than any label claiming a pair of pants is high rise or mid rise. Those labels are marketing categories, not measurements calibrated to your specific body, and the only measurement that actually matters is the one you take yourself, standing in front of your own mirror. But the next mistake completely flips something almost every woman believes about slimming her lower half. So stay with me for this one. Number 4. Assuming that a slim, tapered pair of pants will automatically make you look slimmer overall, no matter what you happen to be wearing on top. This is one of the most common beliefs in styling advice for fuller figures, and on its own, tapering the leg absolutely does create a cleaner, more polished line through the lower body. The problem is not the pants themselves. The problem is what happens when you pair a slim, tapered leg with a loose, boxy, unstructured top, which is exactly what most of us instinctively reach for. Assuming looser fabric up top will balance out a fitted leg down below. Instead, it creates the opposite of balance. A wide, loose shape on top and a narrow, tapered shape at the ankle puts your midsection, the widest part of the entire silhouette, directly in the middle, with nothing on either side to visually soften it. The eye reads that shape almost like an hourglass turned upside down, and the belly ends up looking considerably larger by contrast than it would in a completely different outfit. The fix is proportion, not avoidance. If you love a slim tapered pant, and there is no reason you should not, pair it with a top that has at least a little bit of structure and definition through the shoulder and bust, using the same principles we have talked about in earlier videos: a defined shoulder seam, fabric that skims rather than clings, and a hem that ends with intention rather than sitting boxy and straight across your hips. When both halves of the outfit have some shape to them, the eye reads the whole silhouette as one balanced line instead of two competing shapes with your midsection trapped awkwardly in between. A slim pant is not the enemy. An unstructured top paired with it is what quietly sabotages the whole outfit. A helpful way to think about this is picturing your whole outfit as one continuous shape, rather than two separate pieces you happen to be wearing at the same time. If you sketched a rough outline of yourself in a slim pant with a loose, boxy top, that outline would show a wide block up top, a narrow taper at the ankle, and your natural midsection curve, sitting right in the gap between the two, with nothing to visually soften the transition. Now picture the same slim pant paired with a top that has a defined shoulder and a soft drape through the body. The outline becomes far more continuous, one smooth line moving from shoulder to ankle instead of two mismatched blocks stacked on top of each other. That mental picture alone can save you from an outfit that looks wrong the moment you catch it in a mirror, even before you fully understand why. Number 3. Choosing stiff, rigid fabric with zero stretch. Things like heavy raw denim or a firm cotton twill with no elastane woven into it at all. Structured fabric can feel like the responsible, put-together choice, especially compared to something soft and forgiving that might feel less supportive. But rigid fabric with no give creates a very specific problem the moment you actually live in the pants rather than simply standing still in a fitting room mirror. The instant you sit down for lunch, get into a car, or settle into a chair for a long afternoon, fabric with zero stretch has nowhere to go except pull tightly across your lap and stomach, creating visible strain lines and an uncomfortable, restrictive feeling that gets worse the longer you sit. Stand back up, and that same rigid fabric often holds a slightly creased, pulled shape for several minutes before it settles back into place, which is exactly the moment someone snaps a photo at a family lunch or a restaurant table. What you want instead is fabric with a small amount of stretch built in, usually somewhere between 2 and 4% elastane blended into cotton, denim, or twill. This tiny percentage is often invisible to the eye and barely changes how structured the fabric feels when you touch it, but it makes an enormous difference in how the pants behave once your body is actually moving through a normal day instead of standing perfectly still. The single best test for this, and I want you to actually do this the next time you are shopping, is to sit down in the fitting room chair before you decide whether a pair of pants works. Do not just check the standing mirror. Sit, cross your legs if that is part of your normal day, and see whether the fabric pulls tightly or moves comfortably with you. A pair of pants that only looks good standing perfectly still is not actually going to serve you very well in real life. This matters just as much when the seasons change and you start reaching for heavier fabric for warmth. A thick wool blend or a heavy corduroy with zero stretch creates exactly the same sitting problem as rigid denim, just with a warmer fabric. Look for the same small percentage of elastane in your winter pants as you would in the summer, so the extra warmth does not come at the cost of comfort or a clean line through your midsection during the months you are sitting down the most, at holiday tables, in cars, and in cozy indoor gatherings. Even a beautiful wool trouser meant for a special occasion is worth checking with the same sitting test, because a formal setting is often exactly where you will be seated the longest, and the last thing you want is fabric fighting you through an entire holiday dinner. We are now more than halfway through this list, and if you are already thinking about a specific pair of pants sitting in your closet right now, that is exactly the point of this video. This is not about throwing away everything you own. It is about understanding a small handful of details that quietly decide whether a pair of pants works with your body or against it. Details that almost nobody ever explains clearly, tucked away inside seams and waistbands where you would never think to look unless someone pointed them out directly. And remember, the number one detail on this list, the exact one this whole video is named for, is still coming, so do not go anywhere yet. Number 2. Pants with bulky front pleats and large patch pockets sitting directly on the front of your thighs and hips. Front pleats were originally designed to add roominess and ease of movement, which sounds reasonable in theory, but on an apple shape, those pleats add extra folded fabric directly over the exact area that already needs less visual volume, not more. Every pleat is essentially a small fold of additional material stacked right at the point where your body is already fullest, and folded fabric catches shadow and light differently than flat fabric, which draws the eye and adds the appearance of bulk even when the pants technically fit your waist and hip measurements perfectly. Large patch pockets stitched onto the front of the thighs create a similar problem in a different location, adding a visible rectangular shape and an extra layer of fabric exactly where you do not want extra attention. The fix is choosing a flat front construction whenever possible, meaning no pleats at all, just a smooth, unbroken line of fabric from the waistband down through the hip and thigh. If you prefer a small amount of ease for comfort, look for pants with hidden design details instead, like a slightly higher rise that naturally provides room without needing a pleat to create it, or side seam pockets that sit along the outer seam line rather than stitched flat onto the front of the fabric. Side seam pockets are essentially invisible from the front, giving you the practical benefit of storage without adding a single visible line or fold anywhere near your midsection. A flat front pair of pants paired with pockets along the side seam gives you one smooth, continuous line from waist to hem, which reads as considerably more polished and considerably slimmer than pleated pants ever will, regardless of the actual size on the label. If you already own several pairs of pleated pants and are not ready to replace your entire wardrobe overnight, there is one small adjustment worth knowing. A slightly longer top worn untucked or half-tucked, following the same technique we covered in earlier videos, can visually cover the pleated area at the very top of the pants, softening the effect considerably. It is not a permanent fix, but it is a genuinely useful bridge while you gradually shift your pants collection toward flat front styles over time. Now, before we get to the number one detail on this entire list, I want to explain exactly why everything else we have covered matters so much less without it. The rise height, the proportion with your top, the fabric stretch, the flat front construction, every single one of those fixes helps, but they are all working around one central detail that decides more than all of them combined. Once you understand this final piece, you are going to look at every single waistband on every pair of pants you own completely differently, and you will never shop for pants the same way again. Number 1. Ignoring not just how high a waistband sits, but the actual shape and construction of the waistband itself. This is the exact detail this video is named for, and it might be the single most overlooked measurement in every dressing room in the country. Most pants are built with a straight, flat waistband, essentially a simple band of fabric sewn on in one uniform width all the way around, whether it is elastic, fabric-covered elastic, or a plain stiff band with a button. A straight, flat waistband works reasonably well on a body that does not curve much between the ribs and the hips, but on an apple shape, your torso actually curves outward right around the belly before curving back in toward the hip, and a straight, flat band has no ability to follow that curve at all. Instead, it either sits below your belly's fullest point, creating the overhang we talked about earlier, or it sits directly across that fullest point, cutting a hard line right through the middle of it and creating a visible dig or roll along the top edge of the fabric. What you want instead is what is called a contoured or shaped waistband, one that is cut and constructed to curve gently along your body's actual line rather than sitting as one flat, straight band. A contoured waistband is typically a little wider than a standard band, and it is cut higher in the front than in the back, following the natural rise and fall of your torso instead of fighting against it. Because it is shaped rather than flat, it can sit comfortably above your belly's fullest point in front, providing real structure and support exactly where you need it while still fitting naturally around your back and hips without any extra bulk or gapping. This single construction detail is the difference between a waistband that quietly digs in, rolls over, or creates a visible line under your top and one you can genuinely forget you are wearing for an entire day. You can actually feel this difference with your own hands before you ever put a pair of pants on. Turn the waistband slightly inside out and run your fingers along the inner edge. A flat, straight waistband feels like one even, unchanging width all the way around, with no curve to it at all. A contoured waistband feels noticeably different in your hand, wider and more shaped in front, gradually narrowing as it moves around toward the back, almost like it was cut with a specific body in mind rather than a flat rectangle sewn into a circle. Now, once you have felt the difference once, you will never mistake one for the other again, and you will be able to check for it in a store in a matter of seconds, long before you commit to trying anything on. This works so much more powerfully than any other fix on this list because exactly like the seam placement we talked about with tops and dresses, it addresses the actual structural root of the problem rather than working around the result afterward. Raising the rise helps. Choosing stretch fabric helps. Removing pleats helps. But none of those changes anything about the fundamental shape of the band sitting against your body all day. A contoured waistband changes the actual architecture of the garment itself, so you stop managing the problem every single time you get dressed and start wearing pants that were genuinely built with your shape in mind from the very beginning. Once you start checking for this specific detail, you will find you can identify it with your fingers alone, feeling for that gentle curve inside the waistband before you have even looked at the price tag or tried the pants on. I had a client, a warm, no-nonsense woman named Ruth, who told me she had bought and returned 4 different pairs of pants in a single month before we ever met, each time convinced something was simply wrong with her body that particular week. She kept a small notebook, she admitted almost sheepishly, where she had started writing down which brands to avoid, assuming the problem was somewhere in her own inconsistency rather than in the garments themselves. We did not change her size, and we did not change her body at all. We changed exactly one thing, guiding her toward pants with a contoured, curved waistband sitting right at her belly's fullest point, paired with a small amount of stretch in the fabric and a flat front instead of pleats. She wore that first pair to a weekend trip with her sisters, and she called me the following Monday laughing, saying she had worn the same pants for 3 days straight without once thinking about her waistband, something she said had not happened in years. Nothing about her body had changed in that week. What had changed was the shape of the band sitting against her. She told me she threw that little notebook away the next day, because for the first time in years, the problem had a name, and it was never her. That is the real power of understanding all 5 of these details together, rather than fixing just one and calling it done. Your body was never the problem, and it never needed to be managed, minimized, or apologized for. Most pants on most racks were simply built using a standard, straight pattern that never accounted for exactly how your torso curves, and now you know precisely what to check for before you ever commit to trying a pair on. None of this requires an entirely new wardrobe or waiting until some future version of your body finally arrives before you allow yourself to feel comfortable getting dressed. It requires checking the rise against your own hand test, feeling for stretch in the fabric, running your fingers along the inside of a waistband to feel whether it curves or sits flat, and noticing whether pleats and pockets are adding bulk exactly where you do not need it. Small, informed decisions made once at the moment of buying, rather than fought with every single morning for the rest of the season. The next time you find yourself standing in a fitting room already bracing for that familiar disappointment we talked about at the very start of this video, try the tests instead. Feel the waistband before you look at the price tag. Sit down before you decide standing looks good enough. More often than not, you will discover the pants were the ones asking too much of your body, not the other way around, and that single realization changes how you feel every time you get dressed from here forward, long after this particular pair has been worn and washed 100 times over. If any part of this felt like it was speaking directly to a pair of pants sitting in your closet right now, I would love to know which detail surprised you the most. Was it the rise, the proportion with your top, or that final detail about the waistband shape? Tell me in the comments below, because your story might be exactly what helps another woman finally understand that it was never her body working against her, just one detail she never had the chance to learn about until now.